Hey, this is Terry with Openly Concealed, and I am here with a good friend of mine, Steve Meistrell. And Steve is a very important person to me. He's been a business coach, a life coach. In fact, I think if it weren't for you, my marriage probably wouldn't be
well, I don't
know. What it is today. So very important guy. So we're going to spend some time just talking about kind of what he does and the different varieties of things he does. And, at some point we'll get around to conceal carry. But the topic really today is just talking to Steve. He was my pastor. So he pastored Family Life. How long was Family Life?
8 years.
8 years.
Yep.
So 8 years, and I can't remember how long we attended there, but
I pastored 24 years prior to that.
Okay, and so where was that?
At Capital Christian Center.
Capital Christian Center.
Yeah.
So been a pastor for a long time. Mm-hmm. So were your parents pastors? Well, I mean, what got you into being a pastor?
Hopefully it was the man upstairs.
Okay. You just felt the calling on your life.
And my wife and I stepped into that and served and worked in that area for all those decades, and then retired from that, and now we own businesses together and know great people like you and Jessica, and are living the best life.
And that's you said a key word in there, serve. Mm-hmm. A lot of people kind of like, hey, God's called me or gifted me to do this, and I just want to jump in. And sometimes that doesn't come without a little bit of, I guess I would call it sweat equity.
Right.
You spend some time stacking some chairs and greeting, and that's one of the things that our church requires. Like, you want to serve, go greet people, go talk to people when they come in and meet people where they live. And
in the church world, if it's not about people, what's it for?
What's the point?
And so to have that, but it's true in every industry, it doesn't matter if it's profit, nonprofit, or either one of those sectors, there is a proving time or a proving ground.
Absolutely.
Which is always healthy. It's always that protects that individual and then whoever else they're going to influence or lead, whatever that capacity is. So we believe in all those principles. We think those are good for everybody.
People first, and that's kind of our motto at our church is love God, love people, change the world. Right. And that's really what it takes, and I'm a big advocate of that, especially on the show, just talking about sitting at the table. My friend a couple of weeks ago, atheist, and I've got a couple of atheist friends, and I'm like, hey, that's okay. Sure. We can sit down at the table and have a conversation, and we can walk away friends. Right. It doesn't have to be this. That's kind of the world what seems like we live in anymore. Of course, the media kind of sensationalizes that. We won't get into too much of politics, but there's always that at play, and even in churches, you see politics. I remember saying something to a friend of mine one time. He's like, "There are politics in church," and I'm like, "You got people. There's politics. I mean, that's what politics are. It's one person and their view, and another person and their view, and sometimes they don't, mesh and get along." And so I'm sure you've seen your fair share of that.
I've seen more than my fair share of that.
And we're going to get into that too when we're talking about nonprofit versus profit for-profit company. I'm sure same politics, but a little different layout. But and Steve also mentors people. I know he did he's mentored me and my wife as far as marriage goes. And I remember, remember what you said, something about, we got to tear this foundation out and build a new one, and that's really what it boiled down to. And it takes a lot of hard work. And if you're afraid of hard work, it's just never going to work. But
for sure. The thing that I don't think we're told enough is that good relationships, don't take any work. Great relationships take a lot of work.
A ton of work.
And that's the sign that you're doing something right. When it takes work and there is that fulfillment that's coming in both, whether it's a marriage, whether it's a team in a business, whether it's a team in any kind of organization that's leading, it takes work. And there's, here's one thing I've said that course, my employees don't really appreciate it. I have this saying that's, hey, if all it is work, we can do that.
Yeah.
And of course, they're like, well, that's easy for you to say. We're doing the work.
Well, you get to sit in the air-conditioned office, and right?
Not always, but yeah. But for sure, that idea, which is, as business owners, as husbands and fathers, what are our values? Hopefully we can talk about values today, because values do direct what we do with our time, effort, energy, money.
Absolutely.
All those things that are important to us. And as business owners, we have the opportunity to influence our community. Our language would be give back. I try to encourage business owners to give back to their community. My partner and I, all of our employees in the businesses that we own, we live a very good life.
Yeah.
Well, 80% of our customers are right here in the Treasure Valley. And so, I for sure want to take a minute and just encourage every business owner or business decision maker that you get to somehow pour back into or give back to your community, whether that's faith-based, not faith-based. If we want ideas, I can give some ideas on both. But it is this community that is providing you a great living. And I think to give back is a very worthy thing to do.
Absolutely. And we try to do that through serving through our church, through different venues. The other thing I know as a business owner here in Meridian, living in Nampa, sometimes working out of Nampa, is support local businesses. I have products that I know I could buy a lot cheaper, such as my printing. I got a local print shop right over here.
Right.
I call them up. In fact, I just stopped by there today to make some changes. And so I try to support the local guys, even though it's a little bit more, it keeps that money here in the economy.
Absolutely.
And there are certain things that I obviously have to do. And, some of my stuff is built in Washington.
Sure.
Because that's the only place that does it. But for the most part, if I can shop locally here, that really is a way to keep that value here. And then supporting your local church in some way or another. It doesn't have to be, it can be your time. A lot of people think got to give. And, giving can be just your time, or
it can be an expertise that you have.
Absolutely. And that's where you've sown into, I know probably, I don't know how many, but lots of marriages, lots of people. Yes.
I'm older than I look. So I'm one of those younger looking, older people. So, my wife and I have been married for 40 years. And
that in itself is an accomplishment. That's a long time.
Yeah, it really is. And it's the best part of our life.
Yeah.
Out of everything that we do, and we do a lot of great things. We do fun things. We do challenging things. We do adventurous things. The best part of our life is our marriage.
Yeah.
And we think that is intentional. That doesn't just happen. And it starts with me leading in the home, and our code word for leading is serving. It's service. If I serve my family, if I serve my wife and my children and into their best life, it's going to create a situation that we all are in a place of fulfillment and joy, and that we believe that starts with the husband.
Yeah,
he helps set the tone for that. So it's a great thing.
And that's something I realized way too late in life, and in fact, just recently, I went to probably the most spiritual, impactful thing I've ever been to in my life. And prior to that, I had some people pray for me and talk to me, and man, you're a pillar, and you're you're this and you're that, and I'm like, when I went up to this return, I spent a lot of time just listening. And it was amazing, kind of what God showed me in all of that. This idea that a pillar isn't something that you stand up there and look at.
Right.
A pillar is something that holds things up.
Right.
A pillar is something that holds a bridge up. Or I remember looking across this field into a cabin in a deck and noticed all these pillars, and I'm like, there's a pillar. We got in our idea this icon or this like pillar idea, and it's this, boy, look at me, aren't I grand, and sort of thing. And it really just kind of humbled me to understand that that's not what it means at all. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean being the guy telling people what to do. It's the guy holding other people up, trying to get other people up to the same level.
Exactly. Our greatest path for influence is serving.
Absolutely.
And influence is leadership. I'm sure your listeners, everyone's read a John Maxwell book here or there, and he's made that abundantly clear. He's just taken all the ambiguity out of it. There's no riddle. It's simple. You serve people, you'll have influence with them. Influence is leadership. Whether that's an employee, whether that's a neighbor, whether that's a family member. It's interesting you say that. My wife and I did a class for couples several years ago, and it was titled Pillars. Because of the truth of really what a pillar does. And hopefully we're all working to be pillars in our homes, in our communities, whatever social organizations we're a part of. Hopefully we are going in and making all of those better. And if we're going to leave them, we leave them better than the way we found them.
Absolutely.
We all have that opportunity in life, and it's that's when life becomes great. That's when life becomes super.
And when we start setting, I was like this as a kid because my dad ingrained it in me, but you lead by example. You don't lead by telling people what to do. And so I always worked harder, longer, faster than everybody else. But one of the things I came back with from this experience that I had was I'm not going to let anything get in the way. I'm going to, I'm going to serve God. I'm going to, at church, I'm going to be the loudest. And it was kind of interesting because my son's such an introvert. And I'm not. I'm an extrovert. I mean, I make friends everywhere. My wife's like, "Who's that guy?" I'm like, "Just met him." Yeah, like your best friends. Yeah, exactly. But I remember that first Sunday back, I just went up and just forgot about everybody else, and it was just me and God. And I had my hands up, and I was just talking to God, just worshiping, with the worship music. And I look over, and there's my son repeating what I'm doing. A kid who never does that. A kid who just like. And he did a couple things that day. He laid his head on my shoulder, which is not something he typically does. I mean, we have a loving relationship, but he's a little more extroverted than most. And it's just like, wow, this is the one place I hadn't taken a cue from is lead by example in my house. Lead by example as a spiritual leader, not just as a worker, somebody who can go get the job done, but somebody who takes a lead in those spiritual things. And it makes a huge difference in the impact of your kids. And I even remember, my younger kids, or my older kids, I guess, Zach's the youngest, but talking about growing up. And when I was doing the visitation with the ex-wife and getting the kids, and the thing they always remembered was prayer, playing on the worship team or being a youth pastor or some sort of like function where I was connected. And I'm like, it's so easy to go south when we're not staying connected and serving, as we're talking about, just serving people. And it does, even within the realm of that marriage, me and my wife, I serve my wife. That's like, and a lot of guys, manly men are like, make me a sandwich, and I'm just like, that's not how it works. Really,
if you'll serve her, she'll make you a sandwich.
That's right.
You don't even have to ask.
That's right. That's right. The respect is there.
Right. Yeah, I think if we get too focused on what we would call American manhood, we'd be for sure the Western world. We'd be pretty disappointed in what the Western world calls a man.
Well, I think the idea of fatherhood has been skewed from the very top,
no question,
all the way down. And when we start taking our fatherhood from the right father, carrying that down, and then being a true father to our kids,
no question,
it's going to change a generation. And I had a student here a while back that was one of our state representatives, a private class. And, we were talking about politics, and we were talking about, we could do this and we could do that. And I'm like, I don't think you can legislate the heart of a man into place. You can't do it. That change has got to take place here. And you can set boundaries and guidelines. We got to do that. I mean, that's kind of a mandate, but, people are generally going to always take the path of least resistance. The average, the guys that are the hard workers, that are the go-getters, they're gonna face any obstacle. But human nature really is to take that path of least resistance. And I see it in my realm of this training. You're like, well, I don't need a permit. I'm like, you're right. You don't need that stupid little plastic permit that says that you met the state requirements to get your concealed weapons permit. What you need is training. because you have no mental fortitude, emotional, psychological, any of these things. You don't even know what you're getting yourself into.
Right.
So you don't even know that you're equipped for it or not equipped for it because you have no clue. And it's the same way in this spiritual realm too. You know, a lot of people don't know what kind of battle they're in for.
Exactly.
Till it's too late.
Exactly. Not to talk about politics, but if we were to talk about politics,
we're not talking about it. This might be redacted and classified, but we're going to talk about it.
If we were, I think we have so many people focused on language like they're trying to turn us into sheep. They're
sheeples. You hear that term a lot.
The media is indoctrinating us in one way. Really, in my mind, the battle is for worldview. They're trying to shape our worldview more than they are trying to get us to wear a mask.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be a mask guy, but that's not I am smart enough to know that's not the issue.
Yeah.
And if we can get things right, we're actually going to have a country. I'm not one who gives up on America. I think we still have. I think our best days are ahead of us. I think there are some battles.
Oh, absolutely,
which will create that opportunity. But I think we're gonna, when it comes time to hand this country over in the next 25 years, we're gonna have something for the next generation that's worthy of all the blood, sweat, and tears and death that has set up the platform to get us to where we are today.
Yeah.
If you study history, it's pretty clear that a society needs a good purging or cleansing about every 100 years. I think we're in that place.
Okay.
And on the other side of this will be brighter red, white, and blue.
Yeah.
Be clearer. Will be that back to that
what we are, who we are,
exactly, and what it is and why it is we have what we have.
Yeah.
Because there's the sacrifice that has gone before us is it couldn't be numbered, it couldn't be measured, and then if you get around some of these, take it with a grain of salt, college educated idiots who believe that education is free, that healthcare is free. I mean, if you because I try to engage with them, I'm not mad at anybody. I'm not mad at
Let's have a conversation.
Right. When you ask them what free is, if they'll engage with you, they're just saying crazy stuff that some professor said to them.
They don't even know,
and they think it's free.
Yeah.
And so we have a big job to do. I think that's why today's so important. I think that's why what you do, what I do with meeting with people or being around people on a regular basis is so important.
Yeah.
If we just close up and go home and we're not out in our culture, whether that's a business, whether that's recreation, whether that's a faith-based opportunity, it doesn't matter. We need to be out there being that influence that is going to create for a greater America.
Yeah.
And if it was easy, everybody would do it.
Right.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And so we gotta. Our work is not done yet.
Yeah.
I've had uncles, grandfathers, great grandfathers who've died for this country. I'm not leaving that.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving that sacrifice.
Absolutely.
I'm not thinking that's for some other time. That was my blood, and there's no less fight today than there was 40 years ago, or 60 years ago, and in some cases 80 years ago.
Yeah. And it still gets me like, I would say a bulk of my friends are sailors, soldiers, and cops. They've made sacrifices, and it's hard for me to even like do the anthem or anything like that without like getting choked up. I've never served.
Sure.
But those guys are near and dear to my heart. And, I got a lot of friends that even been on this show that have done a lot for this country that people have no.
You still love your country.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we still live in the greatest nation in the world.
That's exactly.
That's absolutely.
If you haven't traveled to another country, you need to.
Yeah. Oh, and I always say that. You're complaining about it here. Go to El Salvador. Some of these places.
Go live there for a year.
Where they're seeing trouble in communism, and you think it's great. I don't quite understand. I don't know why I'm not seeing my timer up here. I don't know where there it is. Okay.
I have 3 grown kids who are all married and have kids, and my middle daughter and her husband own a home that backs up to Rocky Mountain High School or Rocky High School.
Okay, yeah.
And so there's football games, there's basketball, or not basketball, but softball games out there. And my son-in-law, and he gets criticized for it, but I just love it. When they play the anthem for the sports, for the game, whatever it is, he'll stop what he's doing, face the giant flag out there.
That's awesome.
Because he's got 3 little sets of eyes
that are
watching.
Following his example.
Exactly. And and that is what it's all about.
Well, if we go back, and because you're somebody who's worked in mental health. I mean, you know,
yes.
If you don't know, Steve is one of those guys that can help you. My favorite word from Steve is unpack. Okay, so like you get this idea here. Let me unpack this for you and show you kind of what this means. But mentally, there's a lot of mental issues out there. There's a lot of mental health issues going on, and I think a lot of it stems from just exactly what we were talking about, that fatherhood. There's no idea of what fatherhood is, so there's no way. There's no, what I would call a linear path of succession to follow because there's never been that example. And so when you break that down, you talk about even like blurring the boundaries. When we start blurring the boundaries, pretty soon there are no boundaries because they've been blurred to the point that they're not visible. And if there's no boundary and there's no consequence, there's no action. I mean, there's just nothing that associated with that. So it's no big deal.
Sure. Well, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
That's exactly right.
And it's one of the things about the community you work with regularly is that they actually understand, and I wish more of America or America loving people understood, the people you're working with understands there's actually well-funded agendas to the tune of trillions of dollars to destroy this country. If we could all kind of figure that out and believe it's not a conspiracy theory.
It's not in our best interest.
Right. It's not that is it a theory? Do you know this for a fact? No, it's a fact. There are organizations that give trillions and funnel trillions of dollars to systematically tear America apart. And that's why we need some more dads who are going to, be that every time. Yeah. Drop what you're doing. Put your hand on your heart.
This is what America is about.
Right there. Exactly. Absolutely. Simple things like that. And if that doesn't happen, it's just going to lengthen I believe we win, but it'll.
Oh, we know we do. We've read the book.
We win. It'll just make the battle a little bit longer.
Yeah.
I've got my perseverance muscle. It's in shape. It's ready to go. I just hope not to have to use it.
Yeah. Well, it's like looking at the children of Israel wandering around the desert for 40 years. They could have been there a lot sooner, but we work on our agenda instead of God's agenda.
Right.
So let's talk. We're going to take a real quick break here. We're going to do the tip of the day. So this is your tip of the day, and then we'll come back and we'll keep having this conversation. Okay, that wasn't it. So, that's the problem with self-producing. Sometimes you come up a little bit short. So we'll play a paid advertisement from Idaho Enhanced Academy instead.
Idaho Enhanced Academy, Idaho's premier training center. Idaho Enhanced Training, Utah training, and Oregon certification. We also do private tutoring for tactical training, weapons familiarization, and firearm safety. We specialize in concealed weapons training. We also specialize in private concealed weapons training. So if you would like to pick your own day and the start time, you can go to www.idahoenhanced.com and pick a date and a start time for you and your wife, you and your husband, you and a son, you and a daughter, or maybe you and your best friend, and we will provide the training. Your schedule, our training. Are you new to concealed carry and not sure if it's the thing for you or not? We can help with that as well. We'd be glad to have a conversation about the do's and don'ts, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. So, if you'd like to determine whether or not it's something that you might want to do, we can help you. Visit www.idahoenhanced.com www.idahoenhanced.com or call 208-495-4413 to discuss planning for your next class.
Hey, we're back. So just continuing the conversation with Steve Meistrell, a friend and mentor of mine. So you guys that are into business, man, between this Steve and then Steve Hartman. Mm-hmm. So Steve Hartman has spent a lot of time with me. We did a small group with a bunch of business owners, and just gold in there, just getting around other successful people is always, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I know even in this business, if it weren't for Steve.
Steve's a sharp guy.
Not just that Steve, but this Steve right here.
So he's really sharp. Yeah.
So anyway, surround yourself with people. My dad's gone, so I don't have him as a resource because he was kind of an ultimate entrepreneur. But so I've had to fill that gap with good guys like Steve and my pastor Roger and just different guys that I associated with. My buddy at Centerfire Distillery and Caracal.
We mentioned John Maxwell earlier, and I'll try to quote him as much as I can because I'm sure you have his books on your shelves, or if you don't, give him a try, give him a listen to on his podcast. He says we are the sum of the 5 people we spend most of our time with, and so if that's true, and I think for sure to some degree it's true. Who are you spending your time with? And is it the very best? You never want to be the smartest person in the room. Yeah. Or you're in trouble. You're maxed. Yeah. You fit your ceiling.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys can't really figure that out. They're trying to be the smartest guy in the room, and they don't figure it out. A lot of cases, too late in life, they realize they don't want to be the smartest guy in the room because they limit themselves and they cap themselves. And that's what you're talking about. And there's good people around. There's really good people. With great experience, and I guess I would encourage your viewers and followers to make sure not just everybody's had great success. Get around a few people that have failed, but then come back and make it. Because that muscle that is created, that ability to be bouncing back is a very important in life across the board.
Absolutely.
And specifically in business.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I remember when I first started the holster company, and my wife was pretty much dead set against it. Mm-hmm. She was just like, no, we tried a business once, it didn't work. And I'm like, so then we just give up? Or, do we keep, using Rocky Balboa's line, do we keep forging ahead? Do we take one step and put it in front of the other? And, it was frustrating at that point, and now we're both all in, and it's it is what it is. But you see, without diversity, you never excel. I mean, not never. I shouldn't say never, but if you don't see diversity, adversity is what really gives us that drive to I'm not letting it beat me. I'm not gonna.
Right. One of the things we do is we take teenagers up into the wilderness every year. And it's called the Wilderness Experience, and it's about helping teenagers move to new levels, have new levels of confidence and of who they are. And
so, what's the size of that? What does the size of that group look like?
We've done as few as 12 and as many as 50.
Oh wow!
We have all the equipment to do that. But and how we have them reach their potential, or we wouldn't say reach their potential, but have them begin to experience greater potential is by challenging them to do something. So it's one challenge after another, and they're put on a team, and the team has to overcome those challenges.
Okay.
And it's designed in such a way that every person on the team must participate. And it has.
There is no everybody gets a trophy here. It's
there's none of that, and it has to do with brains and brawn.
Yeah.
You have to have a good balance of both, and we put the teams together that way. But challenges is what makes us who we are. Mm-hmm. It's persevering over those. If we have a failure, it actually is a failure if we don't pick back up and keep going and learn from that.
Yep.
And so we all have plenty of opportunities to do that, because there's some area of our life, not that we want to get so microscopic focused on our own life, but we have something we can always be improving on.
Absolutely.
And once again, that's another area of life where we can experience great fulfillment.
Absolutely. I always say, one of my favorite quotes in this world of personal defense is "Ego's not your amigo." Mm-hmm. Don't let that ego get in the way. We shouldn't be out purposely trying to beat people. We should be out purposely trying to create a better version of ourselves than we were yesterday.
That's exactly right.
Rather than like, I'm out to go beat that person. And there's nothing wrong with competition. But at the end of the day, just like, two guys beat the bloody pulp out of each other.
Right.
Doesn't prove anything.
Right.
To me, honor and integrity, those are things that are manly, not this idea of one man beating the life out of another man.
Right.
So it's just not there. So I want to talk a little bit about Royalty Electric. So Steve is an owner at Royalty Electric. So tell us a little bit about Royalty.
Yeah, well, we have Royalty Electric, Royalty Land and Cattle, and Royalty Wildland Firefighting Equipment.
Okay.
So we're busy, but those would for sure be sweet spots for us. But Royalty Electric is we're electrical contractors.
Okay.
We don't do residential. Yes. All we do is
we'll leave that to the other.
Exactly. We'll leave that to the guy with the truck and the dog. We're commercial and industrial.
Okay. And you do government contracts, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. We're doing some of the biggest jobs in the state.
Wow.
We are Idaho Power's preferred vendor.
Wow.
And specifically their fish hatcheries. We are very involved in their fish hatcheries, and when they're building a new one, I think they're getting ready, if they can get it all worked out, to kick one off here in the next year. That's a $1.6 billion a year project, not a year, but a project, probably about a 10-year project. We'll be right in the middle of that, carrying all the technical side and the electrical side. We do anything and everything with a wire, fiber.
Okay. So you guys do connected services like internet and
everything,
all of it. Because I know, Shane was a project manager at our church when we went from a high school cafeteria into this huge building, which was another blessing, which I believe you were part of.
Yep.
And just talking a little bit about some of the stuff that Steve does. So he sits on the boards of not only for-profit but nonprofit organizations. So talking about somebody who's got some knowledge in all of these workings.
It's code language for being old.
That's right. Been around that block a couple of times. It's like going to the building department of the city of Nampa.
Exactly.
Hey Zeke, come on in. We'll just fill that out for you and get that going.
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about the difference between running or having a nonprofit company versus a profit company. I mean, what's the biggest difference between those two? Would you?
I think. Well, I'm gonna state what I think the difference is, but I wish it wasn't.
Oh, sure.
So,
sure.
I think the difference is the mission.
Okay.
When it's a nonprofit, especially my experience would be mostly in faith-based organizations. We are now super involved with it's called Elevate Academy. It's a charter school.
Okay.
It's non-faith based. It's community. It's low income. It's at-risk students.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
We're heavily involved with them. I love that. But the difference would be most of the time, I think, the mission. And of course, when you're paying someone, you have a little bit more leverage. Mm-hmm. Your expectation and how that can get done versus when you're working with an all volunteer organization.
Yep. I mean, scheduling is a nightmare. I know, even anything volunteer, because it's like, what's the incentive to show up?
Right. Those things are tough. But that's where hopefully good leadership.
Yeah.
Good leadership.
Well, it's like that guy that like my dad taught me a long time ago. If you you go in guns a-blazing, your guys will follow you.
Yeah.
You know, if you're the one setting the pace and going into war. And I've had, you know, my old boss from Crossfire, Ron Martinez, CEO, he goes, Terry, I look at sales like war, and there's nobody I'd rather have in the trench at my back than you right there. And I'm like, whoa, you know, that meant a lot to me because I'm just, you know, a little kid from Payette, but and Ron was executive for B of A, you know, a lot like yourself, just tons of experience. And, you know, but it's setting the pace, you know, and Ron's one of those guys, you're one of those guys I'd follow anywhere because. Yeah,
we still, you know, I don't want to, you know, I was getting a doctor's checkup a couple months ago and, you know, and he said something like, you know, as hard as you work, you know, you're getting older, you should be careful. My wife was there.
Not what we want to hear.
Right. Well, I said, honestly, just like a doc, he's a great guy. I said, Doc, if somehow I've led you to believe that I work hard, I want to get the story straight.
I got to tell the truth. I cannot tell a lie, for it was I.
I mean, I mean, and I don't ask any of our employees to do something I wouldn't do.
Sure.
If there was a need for me to do that, I think I like to be on the job too much because the guys are like, can somebody take the old man out for a Coke? He's slowing down production. But that principle is really true. My whole life, I've always been leading in some capacity, or what we might call at the top of the organization. And organizations, and the idea that I would talk down to someone is, I mean, my dad would knock my teeth in. He was still alive. We just don't treat people that way. We don't talk down to people. We don't speak down to people. If I can't get somebody motivated, paid or unpaid, I start looking at myself first. Have I communicated clearly? If I have, what did I communicate? I start reevaluating myself.
There's one of my favorite words, articulating. Learning how to articulate things in a manner that there's no misunderstanding, there's no misconception.
Well, understanding the person, because there are different ways to learn.
Sure.
And once you kind of tap into where that person's at, how they learn, you can actually lead them forward. Versus, no. So we're clear, the U.S. Army does not exhibit leadership. Because I have more stripes than you have to do what I tell you to do because I have a higher rank.
Right.
Not because I'm a leader.
Not because I'm going out and doing it.
Well, because I have rank, you have to do what I say. That doesn't make me a leader. It makes me somebody who tells you what to do. Because if I asked you, hey, you want to go do this or that, you wouldn't follow me anywhere. You follow me from 8 to 5 because I have more stripes.
Right.
And that's just not leadership. And to get to know somebody and find out how they tick, that is one of the keys to leadership.
Absolutely.
And that's difficult with ego-driven people because to learn, you have to listen. You have to listen and kind of listen to their story and find out where they're at, what they've experienced, and try to meet them where they're at and then take them forward.
Absolutely.
And that's one of those things that we've just been, my wife and I, we've just been blessed to be able to do for decades.
That's one of those management tips my dad taught me a long time ago as a young kid, because I came into management as a 15, 16-year-old. Nobody respects a 15 or 16-year-old, right? This is just snot-nosed kid that's working for his dad. Right. And one of the things my dad always told me, he goes, you know, you've got to earn their respect. Don't boss them around. Set the pace. Do the work. And don't tell them to do things. Ask them to do things. Right. And so it was always, that was always my management style. Hey, can I get you to do me a really big favor? I really need this, and this. I got to do this. And I'll help you when I can. But, and you earn respect rather than like being that guy that's just like, I'm the boss because I get paid to be the boss.
I got more stripes.
Exactly right.
It's those leaders at the very least are insecure. Absolutely. And it's really hard to work and function with an insecure person, which is just somebody who's secure in all the wrong things. And so they have to bark orders. They have to raise their voice because they're not good leaders. And so they try to compensate with that with some all those ways. And they're probably going through employees or spouses or families, whatever it is. They're going through all those pretty regularly. And if if they don't ever get healthy, they actually still think it's everybody out there.
Oh yeah, I'm a common denominator guy. I'm like, I'm not a good guy at math. I like simple math, but when it comes to common denominators, I'm always like the guy that's like, okay, so you got 6 people that don't like this one person. Do you suppose you're the problem, that one person? It's pretty highly unlikely that 6 different people are going to have the same perception of an individual. And I always use that with my little brother. I'm like, dude, don't be the common denominator.
Exactly.
Don't be the one that everybody hates. Be the guy that everybody likes.
Yep. And in all of our critics, there's a shred of truth. One of my mentors taught me years ago. He said, Steve, always listen to your critics. Never shut them out.
Yeah.
Never shut them out, because at least there is a shred of truth in there somewhere. If they're the most mean-spirited, worst people, and their intention is to actually destroy you, not help you, at least listen.
Yeah.
Don't then get them out of your life. But there's a shred of truth there that you can apply, and it's going to make you a better man.
Well, you can see gold in anything. I remember working for a gentleman that worked for my dad for a lot of years. His name was Weber McGarrett. And he was a retired Nazarene preacher. And Webb was one of those like rougher than rough guys. And when you got to know Webb, that guy was awesome. I love Webb. And I worked really well for Webb for a lot of years as I was coming up. And everyone's like, man, I can't stand Webb. He's so mean. And I'm like, Webb is awesome, man. I'm just like, you're looking at this all wrong. I mean, in fact, after I started managing, funny story about the whole workplace, I had these gals come to me like, hey, Terry, Webb made us move stuff from here over to there. And then he made us move from there over to there and over here and over there. And then they're like, man. And I'm like, well, let me ask you something. Did you get paid at the end of the day? What? I'm like, well, we're essentially buying your time, right? I mean, I hate to put it so bluntly, but at the end of the day, whether you move one thing 100 times or you move 100 things once, it's all within the scope of work.
That's those formative years.
That's right. And I'm just like, it is frustrating, but Webb and Cookie, his wife, were like master marketers. They were good at like, okay, that doesn't really fit. It doesn't fit the feng shui or whatever you want to call it today's terms, but it didn't fit didn't work right. So let's move it over here. And then they kind of look at it and size it up and let's do this. And so they were constantly gaining ground, with and I learned this a long time ago too, when I had my own retail store. When you move stuff around, it's amazing what people see. They'd walk into the pawn shop every day for, weeks. And then you'd reset the store, and they come in and go, oh, when'd you get that? You're just sitting back in the corner.
10 years
ago. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're just like, it's amazing that the perception changes, all based on little changes.
Exactly.
And we all have our different perceptions of what we see. And I remember growing up in business thinking, okay, this was the perception. And then you talk to an adult and they're like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened.
Well, when I walked into Fred Meyer's on Fairview and Lux Grove, I think it is, I walk in the same door. I walk down the same aisle. I know right where I'm going to get my eggs. And so there's all those things I'm not seeing. And people are creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And that's why we got to get out of the box. We got to get out of all those things.
You know who's really good at that? My wife. So, and now we shop around. I mean, we're doing Winco, Albertsons, sometimes Walmart, but she would write me a grocery list based on how the aisles are set up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. She'd be like, okay, here's. It's just like, I'm just like, who's that smart? And talk about marrying up. I think we all married up.
Yes, we did.
Man alive, I married a smart one. She's something else. Like I said, I got to say, I wouldn't be here today still a happily married man if it weren't for your counsel.
Just because I'm old. Yeah.
That's just the age. And, you've got to have the secret sauce if you've been married for 40 years. So.
Yeah, you figured something out.
So what is the exact secret sauce of keeping a marriage together?
I think it's asking the right questions.
Okay.
For sure, on some kind of a regular basis. One question I'm constantly asking men that if I'm coaching them in their marriage or a difficulty in their team at work, and most men do not have the guts to do this, but it's to ask their wife a couple times a year, what's it like to be married to me? Give me 3 negatives 5 positives.
Oh, wow. And I think we did this exercise.
I'm sure.
I'm sure I've got a journal full of Steve Meistrell notes.
Because and most of the time we're afraid of what's going to come out of our mouth because of how we've conducted ourselves. And so the idea that we're going to improve our marriage usually just stays here. It never really comes out, or we get a one-sided idea, or we listen to a podcast and we say that's what she needs to do. And so it's
all on her at that point.
Well, yeah.
We are
too many times it is. Yeah. Too many times it is. And it's back to great relationships take a lot of work, and we will benefit from that for the rest of my life. Here's when I was 22 years old in my first real career, I asked a man who'd been in the same industry in the same area for years. I said, "What's the key to longevity? I don't want 10 things. I don't want 5 things, and I don't want 2 things. I want one thing. What is the one thing I need to know?" And he said, "That's easy, Steve. Let's sit down. Let's talk. And it's this: you need to make sure you put your family first, because your family are the only ones that are going to be around your deathbed. When you go to meet your maker, I'm not going to be there. Terry's not going to be there. So-and-so's not going to be there." It was all those people at that time. And at 22, you don't even think that way.
Yeah.
But it was how he articulated. I just bit and took that home. And Tanya and I have lived that way. And now, because of we can see the fruit of that relationship with our own children, our grandchildren. We don't have to beg them to come over or to spend a weekend camping. They're upset if we went and we didn't tell them. And I think it's right priority. It's those kinds of things. But I think the thing that in marriage, I think any relationship, but for sure a marriage relationship, the husband and wife need to sit down and ask themselves, do we have a surface relationship, or are we really going to new depths? Because together they can get there. If they won't see that the other one is the problem, but if they'll see that they're both part of the solution and start having that conversation, because perspective's everything, right?
Yeah.
Because perspective is reality.
Yeah.
If my perspective is you don't even know how to load a gun, that's reality to me.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that it's not real. It is real to me. And so, if we can allow our perspectives to be tweaked some by feedback and by working with our spouse, partner in business, your leadership team at your business, whatever we're doing, but surface relationships want to rule the day. And I would maintain that surface relationships take more energy and more time.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
An in-depth relationship. Because you know where your partner is. Everybody knows their lane. Everybody knows their assignment. Everybody knows what they're supposed to have accomplished by the end of the quarter. Whether that's production, sale, it does. Everybody just knows it's clear, and there's no
ambiguity.
Right? It can be celebrated.
Yeah.
Or helped, because it wouldn't be my persuasion that if it's my marriage or a business, someone part of our leadership team, if they didn't make the goal, if they're not quite where they should be, meaning we agreed on some place that we're going to be together, I've never been a blame guy. Then the next quarter, I'm going to get in there with them and we're going to get their numbers or get whatever we agreed with. Even if it's a skill, not just numbers, but if it's a skill, I'm going to get in there with them. And we're going to win one way or another. We just refuse
help each other succeed.
Exactly, and we just as a married couple, and in everything that we touch or invest in, we stay the same way.
Absolutely.
We're not
and that reminds me of something you said to me a long time ago. And I think this can boil down to finances. This can boil down to a relationship. This can boil down to a business or. It takes 2 years of making good decisions to steer a boat that's turned the wrong way.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And so, and I think I've kind of used that unilaterally with everything. I mean, if you want it to go right, you got to quit making bad decisions,
right?
And you got to start heading towards the right ones. And,
right.
If you don't do that, you might get her pitched about 3 degrees,
right,
but you're still heading the wrong way.
right.
Right.
And we got to be willing to accept that we've made bad decisions. Stop making excuses. And how do we even
blame it on other people or whatever?
There's always somebody to blame it on.
Oh,
That's the easy part.
There is always something. How
do we own it?
So we're going to do another commercial break here for Ultimate Hybrid, and then we'll come back and top it off talking about, guns and stuff.
Sure.
Ultimate Hybrid Technologies, the most comfortable and versatile holster on the market. Fits over 200 handguns with no shell change, no hardware, no tools. Also available in 1911 and J-frame. To try one out, visit your local dealer or visit www.ultimatehybridtech.com. The Ultimate Hybrid comes in 5 mounting options, 2 outside the waistband and 3 inside the waistband options. The Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, Mark 4, and Mark 5.
Hey, we're back. So we're going to spend the last few minutes here talking about, of course, guns. It's kind of, we know, near and dear to my heart. That's kind of my passion. But and I wanted to talk to you because I remember a couple of years ago, you asked me about a sale one of my dealers was having, and you bought some guns. And of course, you're a Magnum guy, right? If I remember right, you like the revolvers.
Yes, sir.
And
yes, sir.
So you bought a Taurus G2 Millennium.
That's one.
Did you buy 1 or 2? Did you get one?
3 of those.
You bought 3 of those.
Yeah. Listen, if I could get that price again, I'd go buy a dozen of them.
No, that's right. That's
I
right.
won't say the price because you'll rush your shot.
That's right. It's like hindsight is always 20/20. But so and I've had a lot of. I had she was from Russia, somewhere in the Russian province. Asked me because I never, even when I'm teaching a class, I never miss an opportunity to talk about how God designed us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? God didn't design us to kill, maim, and destroy.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't design us to see evil, mayhem, and murder. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, we got to be willing to step across the line to something we're not designed to do in defense of ourselves or that of others. And I had this gal ask me, I don't see anything in the New Testament that talks about personal defense or like protecting yourself against, gotcha. Evil, mayhem. So, and I've asked my pastor this question, and I'm like, what's your take on that? What's the bottom line at the end of the day when you bought a gun and you're trying to protect yourself and evil presents itself, it exists, and then it presents itself. How do you quantify or correlate that with this idea that God didn't design us that way?
Sure. Let me rabbit trail here for a little bit.
Okay.
First of all,
because I know you'll unpack it.
yeah. Still, she probably is coming from a place of, turn the other cheek,
mm-hmm.
Which is pretty common with Christians or people that read their Bible. And the context of turn the other cheek is you and I are out on the corner, or we're somewhere, we're at the mall, and we're sharing the good news of Jesus, and somebody doesn't like it, and they come up and they slap us on the face, and we turn the other cheek. That's the context.
Okay.
If we're representing God, if we're representing Jesus, we don't pull our gun.
Okay.
We turn the other cheek.
Okay.
And because that's who we're representing. When I'm randomly walking out of the mall,
okay,
and a stranger or strangers come up to accost my wife or hurt her in any way, no, I'm going to stop them with those
devices
those
that we have.
Those things you just mentioned, because they're ever with me and they're ever with her. And that would take us to Romans 13 that says we're a country of laws. We're law-abiding citizens.
Okay.
And the law says that we have a right to protect ourselves.
Okay.
And so because of that, it isn't random. It isn't, I didn't have a bad day and shoot somebody. Literally, you feel threatened. Your life or someone you love, their life is going to be taken or harmed or maimed. Sure. We feel it's very clear in the scripture that we don't stand by,
that we're not victims, and that's kind of how I present it to people. God didn't design us to be victims, but He also didn't design us to kill, maim, or destroy. And so there's a line that you have to step across which is not something we're designed to do,
right.
which creates this.
Which is why you must be trained.
Oh, hey, there's a good one. We talk about that a lot. Everyone knows that, I could care less about a stupid little plastic permit. It's not about that.
Right.
That's your state requirement to get this thing that you're going to carry in your wallet. What's more important is that you've got this ideology and you've got this idea that just because you did everything you thought was right doesn't mean that it's going to go your way,
right.
Legally, emotionally, and, even talking about that thing that we're not designed to do. When we step across that line because we have to, because somebody else made that decision to create the threat of great bodily harm or death, and our objective is not to kill, maim, or destroy. It's basically to stop that action. At the end of the day, we got to live with that.
We do got to live with it. And I don't know how many of your guests or people you talk to. I mean, I've been in that situation. I don't know if I ever told you the story, but when I was 16, my parents were in the Bahamas on vacation. And I was the only one left at home. So,
oh, wow.
And I had my own entryway, kind of the back of the house. My dad said it was great. It was cool. So I come in the back entryway and I heard somebody in it was our China hutch, actually. They were clanking through things. And because of the way I was raised, I had a 12-gauge shotgun in my closet.
A great home defense weapon, by the way.
And
one of the best.
As I was coming down the hallway, I clicked one in.
Yeah.
And that guy went right. He literally tore the door right off of the hinges. Like, I mean, I'd never seen him like that. But I ended up, shooting him. And
really,
yeah.
After he was in retreat.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And that was an issue, of course. We lived in a small town in eastern Idaho or eastern Oregon, just below Sun River. We actually had a place in Sun River, and then we had a place down below. In a little small town, and if it wouldn't have been a small town 45 years ago, probably the outcome would be totally different now.
Oh, absolutely. You would have gone to jail today.
Yep. But
gone to jail.
I say that to say, Terry, those guys they're it just never happens. It's once in a blue moon. Well, I guess I'm once in a blue moon.
Yeah. Well, it's like I always tell people about this whole concealed carry thing because I hear people say a lot of times, well, I'm only going to carry when I do this or I'm like, if you had a crystal ball, that works great because you can go, okay, Tuesday, 2:00, I'm going to need my gun.
Right.
It never works out that way. There's so much randomness. And like I always train, when I'm out on the range, and even though I'm doing this basic Idaho Enhanced class, I amp things up because people do not understand that the minute you present something that seems like stress to them, like I always tell them, I'll never put you under pressure, but I'm going to give you a sense of urgency. Yeah. That sense of urgency to you is going to feel like stress, right. And then your fingers are going to stop working. You're going to forget to turn your safety off. You're going to forget to rack it. You're going to forget to, do all this stuff. Everyone thinks they're ready, and I always think they're going to rise to the occasion. But the truth of the matter is, we always fall back to our lowest level of education, and a lot of times, if that's this much, that's where we are, standing there with a gun, not knowing what to do with it because your brain just locked up.
And worst case scenario, will end up being used by you, on you.
Oh, I have tons of stories of people, and that's what I always tell people. And here's another aspect of this whole idea of carrying a gun. If you're not willing to step across that line, there's a high likelihood you're going to get your gun taken away and shot in the face with your own gun, because you were never willing to do what you had to do. If you can't do it, then don't do it.
Right.
If you're going to do it really
Stay
well.
in your lane.
That's exactly right. And it's amazing to me. I was telling somebody this the other day, but I've been carrying a concealed weapon for 30 plus years, handling weapons for 40 plus years. And in all of that time, I've never had the occasion to get my gun out and point it at someone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I've talked to people, in fact, I won't name names, but it's like, I've pulled my gun 3 different times in the last 3 years, set his permit 3 years, pulled his gun 3 times. And I'm like, it just makes me stop and wonder, what kind of situations are you getting yourself into that you got to pull a gun and think that's the show of force there. I'm like, I don't want anybody to know I've got a gun until I'm ready to use it. This idea of just getting this gun out.
What are you doing downtown in an alley?
Exactly right. That's it. I always look at the parameters and go, okay, well, first of all, like I would tell my son, don't insert yourself into a situation that you don't belong into, period. Exactly. End of story. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's not you or your family, probably best let the police handle those sorts of situations.
You got a phone.
That's exactly right.
phone.
Police always call for backup. Don't you think we probably should? So, but it's just amazing to me. So, do you carry every day, or is it just kind of more of a casual? Okay.
Everybody.
So, tell me how it changes when you're going from Pastor Steve or Counselor Steve or board member Steve to like when you go up in the hills because you're an avid horseback rider. Up in the hills, how does that change? What does that look like?
I think it depends on who's with me.
Okay.
I'm pretty good about situational awareness, but if it's my wife, my daughters, or my grandchildren, I'm on point.
Yeah.
My sons,
they're big boys.
And they know that's what I think about them. It's not like it's covert. No, I guess if you need me, but you're on your own. You're a grown man, and you need to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But my wife, they all carry.
Okay.
But for sure, I would be.
So, are you the one that started that, or is that something that came along later for your boys?
I would. Yeah. No. So I started it, and then I don't know, probably 15, 17 years ago, I told Tanya, I said, listen, you got to start carrying. So whatever that means. And, and so it was like, okay. And we got together with a trainer, a guy we knew. And I think she went to the place on Emerald so many times. And now I think her and my daughter go regularly to stay up.
Okay. So are they going to forward movement?
No, there's on Emerald. Between
impact guns. Impact guns. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And I'm always out in the woods or out at the ranch getting to shoot. So, but and especially like I'm thinking my middle daughter, her husband, he would be a lot like you.
Yeah.
Super trained. There's probably wouldn't venture how many guns he owns. I wouldn't. And there's one for every situation. That's just his nature. And then my other two son-in-laws, they have a pistol, and it's in the top drawer, unless they go on vacation.
Yeah.
If it's something like that, it's with them.
Gotcha.
And with the full intention of, if it's my wife or kids.
Yeah. Take care of business.
We that's exactly what we're going to do. And I don't want to come off arrogant or know it all, but nobody in my family lacks the confidence to not pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Well,
that's the thing. You got to be willing to go that distance. And I don't know how many times I've heard people say in this class, man, I'd never kill anybody. And I'm like, you never kill anybody. You have no business with a gun because you're talking about a device that takes people's lives if used properly. And I always make it a point to let people know the minute they walk in the class, you're dealing with a short range, non-precision weapon.
Yeah. It's
not like your hunting rifle. It's not like your shotgun. It's an entirely different beast, and you got to treat it differently. It doesn't work the same. And this idea, so many people come in here with so many grand ideas, and I've just blown people's minds.
Yeah.
But I had a guy sitting in this chair right here telling me, surgeon, guy's by all means a genius.
Yeah.
If somebody breaks into my house, I'm just going to shoot him in the leg. I'm like, number one, no, you're not. Number two, no, you're not. Number three, I don't think so.
Yeah.
We're talking about a short range, non-precision weapon in the dark.
Right.
And you're doing this, shaking, trying to figure out what. I've just had so many instances, and I know I've talked a lot about this on the show, but brothers that have shot brothers climbing in their windows, parents that have shot their own kids, friends' kids, somebody spent the night they didn't know about, something going on, and I'm just like, we never. That's another thing that I like to link up to this whole psychological thing. We never let our emotions dictate or elicit an action that we can't take back at the end of the day.
Right. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
With the
that never happens.
With
I
the
love
population
this.
increase, how is that changing the concealed carry need? Not the industry, but the need for the housewife and the guy that works at Micron or Albertsons.
And I think this last year we've seen a huge shift in our environment. And so talking specifically about Antifa, BLM, politics, and the hate. And this is the thing I don't like about politics. Can we just get over the hate?
Yeah.
We can disagree. That's okay.
Sure, right.
Can we get over the hate? But that's what we've got. And so we've got people, in fact, a surgeon from St. Luke's, him and his wife hired me to do some training.
Mm-hmm.
And a year ago, they would have never thought about buying a gun or anything. Mm-hmm. And now what I'm seeing now, the bulk of my business is private 2-person, 4-person training of people that are like, would have never even considered this because they're moving in here. And with that influx of movement of people moving in, it's going to create growth.
Sure.
With that growth is going to come that bad element because that's going to bring some of the drugs. That's going to bring some of the dynamics of overpopulation. I mean, we're stacking apartments on top of each other.
Sure.
So we've got a very
so those people aren't saying, well, Terry, I travel to these areas. They're saying, no, for right.
I live here right now, and I'm worried with what I see. I'm worried about, and it's a bigger number than I've ever seen before. I mean, and we kind of talked about this, but we see changes with every election year. We see the same swirl of whatever you want to call it, different name, same swirl. Every 4 years with the election, and then you couple that with COVID. You couple that with riots, BLM, Antifa, and seeing what we saw happen in Portland and Seattle. People, like I said, that would never, ever even consider, even living in places like California that are moving here. And a lot of people get so like dogmatic, and this is where I say, can we just stop hating?
Right.
Because we have Californians moving here in droves, Washingtonians,
that's right.
Utahns. I mean, we have a lot of states moving into town, and at the end of the day, we're all nomads. I mean, all of us are. We weren't born here.
Pretty independent.
So so we all came here by some means or another. So it's not about who comes here. It's about don't take an ideology of some place where you just left and bring it here to create the same thing that you just left. Right. Let's leave it the way it is.
Right.
But unfortunately, the problem is you bring an influx of people, it's going to change the tide. And it can change. I'm not saying it will, but growth is going to bring change. And some of it's going to be great. Some of it's going to not be so great. And like I always tell people, at the end of the day, I do my job. I do what I'm supposed to do. I do what I feel like God's calling me to do. And I know He's got this. Doesn't matter who's sitting in the chair at the presidency. Right. Doesn't matter, obviously it makes no difference who's sitting in the cabinet because that's not going to change anything. Sure. Right. But at the end of the day, I serve the guy who ultimately has got this all figured out. And I may never know all of the implications, ramifications, or justifications for any of it, but don't care. What I care about is to be a good and decent person. And that's my whole philosophy in life. If we can just be, and I find myself doing it every time I drive from Nampa to my office here in Meridian. I find myself, you knew where you were going when you left.
There's an opportunity.
And I'm just like, I gotta all right, listen. So I more and more finding myself when somebody's like, you can tell they're just gunning it to cut you off. Yeah, I'll just back it off and let them in. Have a nice day. We perpetuate, and that's my MO anyway. Even this whole, you'll never lose a fight you're not in. And my philosophy is, I don't care if it's a fist fight, an argument, gunfight, knife fight. You can't lose if you're not in it. And so wouldn't it be better just to be a decent, caring human being and go, okay, you know what? You're going to be a jerk about it anyway. I'm just going to let you in. Yep. I'm not going to get mad about it because all that does is create my blood pressure.
I'm not less of a person.
But I do. I get frustrated at times because I see somebody shoot from this lane 4 lanes over to turn to someplace they knew they were going in the first place. And I'm like, and it drives I know Jessica kind of crazy, but I always try to get in the lane I know I'm going to be in way before I get there. Right. I'm here. I mean, I'm usually in the right lane all the way from Nampa into Meridian Road because that's where I'm going to be turning.
It's not a 2-lane little highway anymore.
No, it's not. I remember when it used to be. Remember when it used to be getting to the boulevard in Nampa? It was Franklin. You took Franklin down.
Right. I can remember when I-84 had a stoplight. It was the last one in America in Caldwell.
Is that right?
Yeah, I can remember those days. It has changed. Wow. And it's interesting the psychology that changes with it.
Yep.
You're talking about educated smart people, and just what they're viewing on TV in Portland and Seattle, which is close.
Yeah.
Causing them to take some pretty major steps in investment,
extreme
time,
steps,
and that is it's worth noting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what does that mean? And
well, like I said, being in this industry for so long, I've just, I always tell people, quit panicking. We see this panic, and then people wonder, why is ammo not available? Well, it's not because they're not making it. It's because you took a demographic of 20% and grew it to 40%. It's going to cause a supply and demand issue.
Right.
And people are like, what?
Right.
I'm like, it's called supply and demand.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same thing with lumber. I mean, we're building here so exponentially that lumber prices are ridiculous. And it's not just here, it's everywhere.
Sure.
But I think we're seeing a little bit different demographic, or a little different sort of thing going on. Because there are some states that are in poverty. We're seeing exactly the opposite. But people are moving here in droves. And so it's bringing all that cash into the industry. And I know, that's how I kind of turn this whole COVID thing around. Hey, private lessons. We won't do a big class.
Right.
We'll do you and your husband. And so I did really well through that whole process. And it's still summer in this industry is a complete flat line.
Yeah.
And I've had two of the best summers I've ever had in my life
They're
in
still
this
coming.
industry.
You can sell a house in California or Seattle for $1 million, $1.5 million.
Move here and buy one for $500,000.
Right, and it's probably nicer and newer, better than the one you sold.
Yep, double wide.
and you got $1 million to invest or use wisely to change your life and the life of your family. Who wouldn't?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
that's what America was founded on. That's why people came here.
That's exactly right.
The American dream,
Right.
capitalism is alive and well here in the U.S. And like I said, I'll always say it. No matter how bad it gets, we live in the greatest nation in the world. That's why so many people are trying to get here.
Yeah, that's true.
So, well, hey, we're out of time. I want to thank Steve, mentor, friend, for being here, and we'll have him on again. We'll do another one and
love to
talk about some more stuff. So, hey, thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next week. Let's see. I probably should do this just so we know we're